Welcome to the Biotech Startups podcast by Exceeder. Join us as we speak with first-time founders, serial entrepreneurs, and experienced investors about the challenges and triumphs of running a biotech startup, from pre-seed to IPO, with your host, John Chi. In our last episode, we spoke with Michael Paliotti about his transition into a customer-facing role and the lessons he learned early on in sales. He shared how he built trust with scientists, the difference between academia and industry, and the mindset shift that helped him succeed. If you missed it, be sure to listen to part 2. In part 3, Michael dives into his full transition into sales, what convinced him to make the leap, how he developed his own approach, and why relationship building remains at the core of his success. Michael also talks about an unexpected passion project, how a casual interest in wine turned into starting his own winery, and the surprising parallels between winemaking, business, and sales.
I want to unpack a lot of your kind of experience at Millipore, but before that, I guess for the kind of your Novartis MBA experience, and then eventually after graduation getting, got those 3 offers. And I realize that I'm kind of chronologically kind of like jumping forward here.
Yeah,
but can you talk about, you mentioned that your colleague at Millipore who actually got you into sales, you guys have a winery together.
Yep.
Can you talk about that? That's super awesome.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So Ron and I became good friends. I remember the very first day, before I got into sales, when I was still the field scientist. So he was one of the reps in San Diego, and I was the field scientist supporting him. And I remember meeting him at Panera Bread for the very first time over in San Marcos. I'm sure he doesn't remember. And chatting with him and really kind of seeing what he was looking for. And I was up at Amgen at a hotel, was doing a training up there, and he needed something from me for a customer. And I remember I took the time to diligently find all the information and stuff and send it back to him. And I'll never forget, probably never claim that he said this, but he's like, this is exactly what I'm looking for. We haven't, had, specialists that be, that were this meticulous. So that really kind of set my tone. I'm like, all right, this is the stuff that I need to do. So anyway, so I knew him all the way since then. And of course, like I said, when I got the sales job, we were colleagues at that point. He was doing half of San Diego. Well, there was 3 of us actually, but he had 92121, which is everything down here. I had UCSD, and then a third person had like some of the outlying types of things. So we were colleagues for a long time, and so I've known him for a while, and so we just got. He's become my best friend, my only friend, really, but anyway. And so we do a lot, and he lives in your Ocean side, so not too far. So, we would do a lot together, and I'll never forget, there was one time I'm always looking to do things, right? And Miracosta College, a small little community college up here, has these, courses that you could take, you pay, $100 and you can do, learn Excel or whatever. Well, wants to learn Excel. They had wine tasting. So I'm like, hey, dude, want to let's do this. Let's do wine tasting. I'm like, what the hell? It's like, $50, you go on, 4 Thursday nights and try some wine, learn some stuff. Okay. So I'm just like, yeah, let's do it. So we did that. And then, we did it again, and then we did it again. And then we ended up taking the first course over again. I'm like, that was really cool. Yeah. And so he got really, really, really interested into it. I mean, I did too. I mean, he got so interested that he ended up getting his business of wine certificate at SDSU, you name it. And of course, he met some people there that we'll get to, which will help to start the winery. And so we were into wine, not entirely seriously, but more so than your average person. And so COVID hits in 2020, right? And so we were planning to go to Reno, Nevada to go see the NCAA tournament. I'm like, yeah, $1.50 Bud Lights and hot dogs and everything. Yeah, all day, right?
Sweet.
So we were planning on going up there, and then COVID hit, of course, and I'm like, oh, crap, we had to cancel all of our plans, and all this stuff. So we were bummed. And then, April comes around, because it was in March, right? April comes around, and at that time, we didn't really know what was happening. Things started to open up again, because we thought, it's going to be a couple weeks or whatever, right? Things started to open up again and say, all right, instead of flying to Reno, March Madness is over, or was canceled, I think. we've always wanted to go to Paso Robles or Paso Robles, depending on who you talk to. Let's go up there. We'll drive up there. Spend a couple of days and just do some wine tasting. Yeah, sure, let's go do it. So we went up there, did some wine tasting. Maybe we had too much wine because then we decided, hey, we should start our own winery. So we did. It's like, hey, we got the interest and whatnot. And Ron's like, hey, I got my business of wine certificate at SDSU. I know a few people. I know a winemaker down there. He may be interested. Let's see if he might want to, join us. Because, I didn't know how to make wine. He didn't know how to make wine. Now, we knew how to drink wine. We had an idea of the whole process, but we didn't, all know the details. And so he said, okay, I'll contact them. We'll go to lunch at LTH, local tap house over here, next week, and we'll see if he's interested. So we all went to lunch. He said, here's the plan. We want to start a winery. I mean, eventually what we want to do, and it's still the plan, have maybe a tasting room here in Carlsbad or Oceanside. People could walk up from the beach, taste wines and whatnot, but we also want to have maybe canned wines, that they can bring out on the beach or whatever. This is the grand scheme of things. And he's like, yeah, no, I'm in. He said, but I don't have the financial wherewithal to kind of put into the business. And so we came to a conclusion and say, okay, if you bring your expertise that we need for my winemaking, that can be your contribution in that. Ron and I will, fund it from this end. And of course, we'll all be equal owners and we'll see how it all works out at the end. So it actually worked out quite well. And so he actually did get his credentials from UC Davis, which where all the big winemakers get their stuff from. So he's no slouch by any stretch. And he happens to live up here in San Marcos. And like I said, Ron's in Oceanside. I'm in Vista. If you know northern San Diego County, we're all right here. And we said, okay, the one thing that we do want to do is we want to make good quality wine. Anybody can make crap, right? We want it to be good. And we want it to come from an AVA, which is American Viticulture Area, where they get their wine from, an AVA that's well known. Obviously, Napa is huge, Sonoma's huge, but it's just too expensive. So Paso Robles, where we had decided to go taste, was the perfect scenario. There was still really good value for grapes there. What I mean value is, high quality AVA grapes, but at prices that were relatively reasonable. So that's what we did. And we started our production up there. And basically what we have is called an alternating proprietorship. You can almost think of it as a CDMO for wine.
Interesting.
That's kind of weird. So there's one company in Paso, they're called Pacific Wine Services, and that's what they do. People want to start wine. Nobody has their own grapes. I mean, because we source them, of course. Nobody has their own equipment. But you come in there, you hang your O2 license, which is your liquor license, figuratively or literally, depending. And you do all the work there. They charge you to use things or whatever and move the barrels around or whatever. But you can do it, and our winemaker has a say to what he wants to do. And so he would go up maybe once a month, check on the wine, modify it if we need more acidic, whatever. And we're like, okay, whatever, I'll read check. So we did that for a while. And then of course, with wine, it takes some time, right? Because there's a harvest every year. So you got to wait till the harvest comes out. And then of course, if you're doing a red wine, you're going to age it, which we aged 18 months. So there was some time when we started originally to when we actually had a final product. But when we had that final product for the first time, I tell you, that was the best feeling ever, to actually have
awesome
your own wine bottle. It's like, we made this is our label and all that stuff. It was so great. But the one thing I want to just kind of touch on, though, is it goes back to, once again, who when we went up to Paso originally, that place was the only game in town. If you don't live there and you're not in the business, you just got to go there. And they would nickel and dime us for everything. I mean, if they moved the barrel, it was $50. If they looked at the barrel like with their left eye, it was another $25. If they happened to just not tie their shoes that day, it was another $25. And so it's just nickel and dime. It's like, this is crazy. And so as we got to know more people in Paso going up there, and checking on the wine and just getting in the ecosystem, we found that there are a lot of other small wineries that kind of do this on the side. And like, hey, we have the ability to do this. Well, if you want to do that, come on over. So but there's nothing that's advertised. You just kind of need to know these people. So we met this one gentleman up there. His name is Hale Schmidt. He used to be a Top Gun fighter pilot, actually.
Oh, wow.
Really cool guy. and talk about 360. He went to Notre Dame. So I got to meet him. You got the connection there. He used to obviously be down here in San Diego, Top Gun fighter pilot. I mean, he's like the real deal maverick. He still does, I guess, some training on some of the simulators. So we got to meet him. He has a winery called Velatus Wines. His wife, very nice lady, I can't remember her name, but her father was like the drummer in Supertramp. So it's like, it's all this cool stuff, right?
Whoa.
And so he's like, yeah, we can do that. Over at Midnight Cellars, I make all my wine over there. I hang basically my AP there. If you guys are interested, you can do the same. It's kind of, we're here to support the small, makers. We're not here to make a buck. We want to help you, be successful. So it was probably maybe 6-7 months ago that we moved our facilities in production over there. And I mean, we're saving a ton of money, and it's been great. It's such a more of a family atmosphere, but I won't go too deep. But what I'm getting at is, it's once again, it's the people, and you have to make the effort. We had to make the effort to go up there. I know it was horrible, but we go up there and drink wine at different wineries and talk with people.
Oh,
you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, you got to do the little violin, this world's smallest violin, just playing for you.
Like, we got to go do networking again. So,
no. yeah. That's so amazing.
But yeah, I mean, you had to make that that effort, and and it paid off. And I will tell you this: the best part of owning the winery, though, is you get industry discounts, so we don't have to pay for tastings anywhere. I mean, we tip the guy, of course, so it's like, but it's actually really cool. So anyway, so it that kind of comes full circle with that too, and it kind of goes back to the themes of the networking, who some of your background that just comes up to actually, have these coincidences. Like I said, like he went to Notre Dame, and so we got to chat about that. And you just never know. You keep all your options open. Take these leaps of faith. Sometimes they don't work. But if you keep at it, it can be fun, and you can have your own product at the end.
That's so cool.
Buckle Wines, if anybody wants to buy any.
That's so cool, because I think, I when I was thinking about, because I really wanted to like talk about your winery too, because it's kind of like a culmination of like all these creative experiences. Like, you're applying your business knowledge. You're obviously, there's like a bit of like sales aspect to it as well, and also kind of like all these relationships that you've built. And I think I love that and then we talked about you eventually wanting to have a product that with your label on it, and I love how that is like can all come kind of get woven together. And something that's like really cool about the winery experience is like, and you talk about how like, when you go to Paso, kind of like you have to like you have to actually be a part of a contributing member to the community.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like and I think sometimes, especially when early days, when the word networking always gave me the like, ooh, I don't really like that. But it's kind of this thing where it's just like, it's more of like, just go do good. Like, just go do good. Like, go be helpful. And don't be like transactional about it. Don't like, just like, go do good. Eventually the universe will pay you back. And that is like something I think, sometimes, especially when, I remember, like, I think I had a soured like networking event when I was like early days, where it was like everything was like overly transactional, and I was like, this is not my vibe. And I kind of just like from there, I kind of was like, I kind of like PTSD or scarred from it.
Yeah,
I never want to network again. Like, this was a bad experience, but like, I think for anyone out there who is trying to learn this, it really is just like, be a cool person, be a contributing member, be fun, and just put good out there. And eventually it finds its way back. Kind of like, again, the coincidence is like if you do that in every instance, people talk. Like, Michael's a rad dude. Like, we worked on these things that might not be relevant for what you're thinking about now, but like, we worked on these cool projects. You probably want to talk to him or something like that. And then it always like comes, and where it doesn't work is when you go in just trying to extract. Like, that never works. That like, you really don't want to do that, or you kind of just like create this like transactional element to it, because like then it's that. There's no like longevity to it or like sustainability to it. It's
exactly.
Just like, and I always think about it from like, I always like, I don't know, maybe it's like, I'm speaking for John now, Nick Cedar. I always like, life's too short to not like just like work with people who you enjoy and you want to like help out. Like, and so every time we engage with any stakeholder, it's like we treat them like friends. It's just like you're part of the family, like, and we're just gonna help each other out when we want to, when we need something. And I think that goes a long way. Versus just this purely kind of like, I did this for you, so you need to do it for me type situation. It's just like, it never ends well. So now to go back in time, you got that call for Millipore. And I guess like, what made you choose Millipore? Like, and you had like now Cytiva, and you had a couple options here. What was it that like, really just like, 10 plus years now, like what made you choose Millipore?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it goes back to exactly what you were saying. It was as the relatability to the people that I interviewed with, and who was going to be my boss at the time, and the team that she described it, the culture, which I think that culture still exists in MilliporeSigma today, which is a big reason why I'm still here. And so I'm like, I can see myself working with these people. I can see myself doing this. The way they explained how they did business at the time. Like I said, Millipore was a smaller company, so big enough that they had the name, but small enough that we still could be really flexible. I wish we were still that flexible nowadays, but it is what it is. But we built flexible to do a lot of things, and so I really enjoyed, that prospect of it. And so I'm like, all right, I think this would be, a cool place. Obviously, I'd heard of them. Everybody's heard of Milwaukee Water and all that stuff. Well, we're so much more. Yeah. So yeah, that was kind of the main reason.
Yeah. Well, I guess can you describe like what was the Millipore culture that you mentioned, like the flexibility, like
Yeah.
what was like that kind of like, oh, that is rad.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hitch my wagon here.
Yeah, so it's actually, it wasn't, I found out real quick, like, if things didn't, work, or you had an idea, people were open to like, hey, we should do this differently, right? Or, hey, that's a really good idea. And people would really latch onto that. I'm like, and so we had this more of a fluidity of being more efficient at doing things. And so I really enjoyed that. But I also really enjoyed, the culture, which was more like you were saying, it was related, family oriented, felt like more, relationship. You wanted to work with these people. They cared about your development. They worked with you really well. There wasn't like, it wasn't like the Army and the Navy, you're on the same team, but you're always fighting. We were the specialists, and us we worked really well together. It was really synergistic relationships. And I liked how that all developed. And from the first time that I had met, Ron, who I was supporting at the time, and I'm like, oh, this guy's pretty cool too. I could see myself working with him, being a specialist with him, and the other rep in San Diego. And so I'm like, all right, I like this. And that was kind of, what moved me into that area, or into the Millipore scheme, and keeps me there today for many aspects.
Very cool. And for those who, MilliporeSigma is a very large organization, but for those who may not be familiar, can you just like set the table for us? Like, yeah. Obviously Millipore was, a smaller outfit back then, but now you guys have you mentioned kind of like a broader product suite, service suite. Can you just like set the table on what is like MilliporeSigma's North Star, and what are the products and services that you guys provide the scientific community with?
Yeah. So what MilliporeSigma is we're a large bioscience company, life science company. And we sell reagents, filtration, which goes back to the Millipore days, chemicals from the Sigma Aldrich days, to a bunch, to customers in the research space. So universities, pharma, biotech, industry, you name it. And so I really, the breadth of the portfolio that we have, I think it makes it really exciting for me to work here, continuously to work here. And once again, these are Michael's opinions, don't reflect the opinions of MilliporeSigma by any chance, but I really like the culture there. I think in the way that it's, I have actually interacted with people. It's always been really genuine. And I think there's a caring aspect there that, you don't see a lot, and maybe you see them in other companies, but I don't know. All I know is when people have left the company, many times they want to come back. So I've decided, well, might as well just stay. So yeah, no, they care about the people. I mean, I could say, during COVID, we didn't have any layoffs. We didn't have any cuts in salary, all that type of stuff. And I think just that within itself speaks volumes of, their appreciation and what they think of the employees.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think we, definitely, just seeing all of our interactions at like, at Nucleate events, even just like kind of like the more local events, like incubator events and stuff. You guys seem like you're having a lot of fun too, which is great.
It's great, and that goes back to, everything, a lot of things that we've been talking about, it's the relationship that we have with each other, the respect that we have each other, how we built that rapport. And then of course, how we built that rapport with our customers. Right. So, I like to see myself as, when I was in sales, as a problem solver. I never really went in and say, you should buy this because this, and this. I'm like, hey, what's your problem? Can we help you? That type of thing. And so that's, I think, how, I still try to talk to and coach my current team, about, what we're out there doing is we're not out there, selling stuff. We're out there solving problems. And, there's a synergistic relationship. I mean, research labs don't exist without our products, and we don't exist without them. A lot of people appreciate that relationship, so you're going to get some customers like, oh, it's just another vendor. But that's where you differentiate yourself and say, hey, that's fine. Do whatever you need. But, here's our solutions and I'm here to help you. And if you don't need it, that's fine too.
I love that approach too. Cause I think again, just like I don't believe this now, but having before I got sales experience and seeing what good sales and bad sales looks like I just put almost all kind of like the same with the PI conversations I had, like industry, similar situations like sales
reps.
Yeah. But it's kind of this thing where it's just like, exactly what you described. It's like, what are your priorities? What are your problems? And how do we work backwards from that and solve that? And for me, it sounds like also for you is just that like, I'm not going to sell you something if it's not the solution. Right. And that's okay. I'm going to try and find you the solution, even if it's like with a competitor, even if it's with somewhere else.
Yeah.
I just want to see you have your problem solved ultimately. And that's where I was like, it's not all like this and just like stay away salesperson. It's more of like, truly like, I'm trying to be helpful here. It would be awesome if what I offer is the solution, but I realize that it is not always the case. There are other things that like this problem just might not be within our domain.
And you have to be patient. I mean, and you have to play the long game, realizing that, hey, I might not be able to solve your solution today or your problem today, but a year from now when you have another problem and you're like, oh, I remember Michael came by and he had something like that, then they come back to you. And then over time, it's like I had people come to me that like, I have no idea if you have this, but I trust you. Do you? I'm like, no, I don't. But this company does. Or yes, I do. Right. So you have to. I think that's one of the things I'm trying to try to instill in my kids now too. Is you got to be patient if you want to do things right, especially in sales and interacting with other people. You have to build that rapport. You have to have somebody trust you to do what your job is or what you're trying to impart on them. Right. And that is, to me, that's the most rewarding thing. When I first went into sales, I didn't plan. I'm like, oh, I can play the long game and do all this other stuff. I just kind of did what I thought I would want from somebody coming to me and saying, hey, do you have a problem? And let me help you. And the interesting thing too is in sales is a lot of times the customers don't even know they have a problem, and you can actually help them by asking them certain questions like, wow, I never even thought about that. Yeah, there is a better way to do that, and you almost become this like resource and this epiphany goes off, and that's kind of fun too. And maybe you don't even have something to help them with that problem that they didn't even know about. You probably do. But then helping them be able to, bridge that gap. It's just, to me, that's the most rewarding thing. It's not making your number. I mean, that's important, of course, but I really enjoy the job is like saying, hey, I was able to work with this person to help them solve a problem that they can go on to do, greater things too. That to me is the most rewarding thing, not being sales rep of the year and all that other stuff. I mean, that's fine. But that's not why I'm in it.
Yeah, and it's almost like like I've always the same. Likewise, when we talk about like you got to be a trusted resource and like almost take a consultative approach,
Exactly.
right? And trust is earned too. That and they like that whoever's on the other side like has to trust that you're going to do right by them, even if it's not in your economic interests.
Yep.
And because there are plenty of salespeople that don't take that approach.
I know, and that's a shame.
Right?
But I mean, it's like that really in any career.
And yeah, and this is like broadly, like any there's different ways to go about it. And sometimes sales, like people, this is where you get the PTSD. You're like, that was a bad experience. You know, if you ever bought a car,
right, and that's what most people think of. That's the bummer. It's the
that's the bummer. Yeah, that's the bummer. And like, you know, I'm just like, these pressure tactics are really uncomfortable right now. Like, you know, and no one, and you just don't want to go onto a car lot. Which is unfortunate because it doesn't have to be that way. Like it does not have to be that way. It just happens to take up a lot of the mind share of what it could.
And it's funny you should say that too, because like I said, I just picked up the company car yesterday, and it's a very surreal experience. I've obviously done it a few times, but I go and I pick it up, and they give me the keys, and they're like, "Here you go." I'm like, you know, hey, you're not. Basically, they're like, you know, you're not buying it from us. We don't care. Take the car, go. Right. You know, it's not like, you know, hey, let me show you all this, right? Stuff, you know, and so it's still like, and to me, I'm like, I was thinking to myself, you know, coming from the sales side, I'm like, you know, I get it. You know, there's no financial, but I mean, you know, I could buy a Toyota maybe on my own when I retire, right? You know, and if I had a good experience here, you know, and they're like, I mean, it's kind of weird. They're like, here's a car, and you just drive away. You feel like you stole it. But at the same time, it's like you can tell. And I would go to the car lots prior to knowing I was going to order a car. We only had a few choices. So, and I go there, and of course the guy comes, hey, how can I help you? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, I'm getting a fleet car. I just want to see what the colors are, you know, and it's almost like, oh, well, don't waste my time. And just like turn around. I mean, that actually happened once. And I'm like, seriously? You know,
come on.
I mean, it just shows, first of all, that the sincerity is not there. And it paints, you know, salespeople in a bad light, of course, too. But it's like, it's just, I don't know. It's just not right.
It's not right. It's not right. And I think too, that's, you know, anytime I'm thinking about like, what is the culture that I'm trying to instill is that it's the exact opposite of that. It's like the exact opposite of that. And I think, you know, and this again, is just like, whether you're in life science, this is like broadly applicable to all business. It's like life is long, people remember. And and, you know, again, you never know. Again, it works both ways. You never know who people know. Your reputation can precede you in both directions. Like word can get out that you're a wonderful individual. Word can get out that you're also not a wonderful. You're the opposite of a wonderful, and it cuts both ways. Yeah. So it's kind of that thing. You're just like,
as long as you don't ask my wife first, I'm okay.
Exactly. And the thing too is, it's like you know, it almost takes, you know, it almost takes more effort to not do the kind thing. Like it's just like it's like if you need like a selfish interest, it's just like easier to be nice than it is to not be. So and you know, the world repays you and the universe repays you. So to get back to your, you know, you're a field application scientist. This is your kind of first foray into like kind of like the commercial aspect. Can you just talk about like what it was like for you to work with customers for the first time?
Yeah. No, it was interesting because, I mean, you know, I was on the other side of the bench originally, and now all of a sudden I'm coming in and I'm supposed to be the expert on all of this and, you know, show them how to use some of this equipment, some of which I just learned myself. And it's just the nature of the business. But I will never forget my very, very first day in the field. I was going to do a Luminex demonstration. They had actually a Luminex instrument, and they wanted to get some kits, and I'm going to run them with them and show them the proper procedure and all that stuff. And so I'm driving up, and it happens to be up in LA. And, you know, I'm not really, I haven't been in California that long at this point, but I really just never go to LA too much because it's, you know, traffic is just not worth it. So I go up there, I'm like, all right, I'm following. Of course, we don't have, at the time, there's no iPhones. I mean, I have a BlackBerry, right? So you know, we don't have obviously any type of maps in the cars and all the other stuff. So you actually had the Thomas, I don't know if you remember, but the Thomas maps trying to figure out where we're going, and going to LA, like I'm going to the 5 to, the 110, the 605 to 1. I'm like, okay. So I ended up I had to go to Charles Drew University. And it's in a section of LA that I wasn't familiar with. So I'd get off I think it was the 101, or not the 101, the 110. And I see these signs, and I'm not, like I said, once again, I haven't been in LA a lot, not really familiar with it. I see these signs that say Compton Watts District. I'm like, oh, I'm familiar with those areas. Right? Where am I going? Right. And so I go to Charles Drew, and it's basically in this section, and they're an affiliate with UCLA. I think Harbor Medical Center, something to do with that. And so my very first experience is like, I'm going through these metal detectors, right? At Charles Drew, this place I've never heard, in Compton, California. I'm like, what have I got myself into? Right. But it was a really good experience. I really enjoyed the very first day I was there. The account manager who had the account, met me there, and it was really fun to just help the customer do what they needed to do. Right. They had this new technology. They were excited about it. Especially there because they didn't have a lot of funding. So this was like kind of a big deal. And I was there showing them like, these are the capabilities of it. Let me help you do this. And I won't forget this either. When we were there, so the Luminex instrumentation, basically it's almost flow based. Well, it is flow based, and it has a 96 well plate, and it sucks up from the individual plate. Basically, it's ELISA's on a bead. Okay. Well, there's a platform, obviously, that moves the plate around so that the probe can go down into the different wells. Well, we were working on everything, and when we got to go to read the sample, the platform wasn't working. And I'm like, oh my God, this is my first day, we're doing this stuff. And I'm like, the plate's not going to stay that good anymore. It's the only kit that they got. Now we can't read it. What do we do? And so I take the plate. I'm like, all right, never fear. I said, I'll drive this to our Temecula site, and I did, and I'll run the plate over there. I know we have Luminex assays or Luminex instrumentation over there. So I take the plate, put it on ice, drive down, because going to Riverside, Temecula, it's not really the easiest place. So you got to kind of take I think it's the 91, and that's horrible. Anyway, so it's like late at night. I end up at our Temecula facility, and it's like 9 o'clock at night, and I'm like running the plates. I'm like, this is my first day, and I'm like, it's kind of cool because I'm helping them out. I'm going the extra mile, and I don't mind. But I'm like, if this is like this every day, I'm going to be dead in like 6 months. It's just crazy. But after I had the data and I sent it to them, that was just kind of what it was all worth it, right? Not only did I help them solve the problem, I'm not saying, putting myself in a pedestal, say, look at me, I did all that, but I mean, I found a solution, and some of the solution was really extreme, taking the plate and actually having to go run it. But, I helped them really get what they needed to know. And that was really rewarding. And so, the first day, even though it was a little bit harrowing, it was at the same time really a good experience for me to see, oh wow, this is what it can be about, and this is how I can actually really help people with their research.
I love that. And there's a couple elements that really stood out to me. One of my favorite books is the book Unreasonable Hospitality, which is the 11 Madison Park folks in New York, the super fancy like 3 Michelin star restaurant. And they just talking about doing that extra mile being so pivotal. Like you could, like, when you go to a restaurant and have a fantastic service experience, like it just like is seared in your memory.
Yep.
Like you just remember, and people remember how you make them feel. Like they don't ultimately remember they don't remember what you did. Like it just goes into the annals of time. It's how they feel that they remember, and going that extra mile and having those moments that like making someone feel like they're cared for and actually achieving what they want to achieve is what makes it all. And I'm sure they will remember that you did that, right?
They're never going to forget that, right?
Yeah. And if you take a very hard-nosed business approach to it, it's like, that's not scalable, right? But it's those things where people, you do it, and again, you show that you're going to do right by them, that they always come back. It's kind of like going to a restaurant. Like when, like I love going back to the restaurants where I feel like I'm having a good time and people are treating me nice. And like, I know the people, I know the wait staff. I'm like, we're like friends here. And And those are the moments, I always remember in that book, like someone, I think they were talking about how someone wanted a New York, halal cart. Like they're like, oh, it's our last day in New York. We want to go. We didn't get a chance to get halal. And the 11 Madison Park was like, well, they're like, we don't have a halal cart, but they went out and went and got halal and basically just like got it for them before they jumped on their plane. And that moment was like super memorable. They're like, oh, they went out of their way to go do this just because, and they didn't say that to the staff. They just were talking amongst themselves.
Right.
And they just heard it. And they were just like, wait a second. And just ran out, bolted, got
That's
it.
awesome.
Right. And
yeah, I love that.
That type of stuff, though, again, it's kind of this breadth of domain. And just, you can carry that into whatever domain you're in. It's like, it could be like you going driving to Temecula, running the samples to get them the data that they needed. And I think designing and doing that type of stuff is always really important, regardless how big or small your company is, and regardless of what the industry is. It's like, at least what I find is like those little moments that really go the distance. And so you're making now you did a year and a half of being a field application scientist. And then you got the recommendation by your friend. It was Ron, Ron was like, okay, maybe just like, you would give a shot for, just like not being a field application scientist and becoming an actual, just like full-time, sales account manager. Can you talk a little bit about that transition and what it was like for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, it goes back to the original rationale why, at least in my mind, I didn't want to make that transition was because of that number, right?
Yeah.
And I was more of like the intangible stuff. I'm like, can I make the number? Is that going to change the way that I do things? And it didn't. The number it's not necessarily going to come naturally. I mean, you're going to have to work hard, but to me, it was always the secondary stuff. It was like, I needed to, make a name for myself. I needed to help people. I wanted to be there on campus. And so one of the first things I started doing is I did these cart shows, and I just did them at every building. And so I had this cart, had a few pieces of literature, maybe some of the newer products on there, and then some donuts and coffee. And I'd come by and said, hey guys, if you have any minute, I got donuts, coffee out here, some new stuff, just stop by, no problem. And then the organic thing that happened, which was beautiful, which really started this whole, relationship trend for me, is people would come out and it was like the water cooler. We would just start chatting, and I would chat about stuff. There'd be times I go to UCSD and I'd be there all day talking with people, and I probably never even talked about products. But you know what? Those are some of the most successful days, because they know that when I came back and it's like, hey, how was your vacation? Or how are the kids? Or right now, or I'm like, have you seen the new Star Wars trailer that just dropped? I'm like, oh, I know, it's really cool, right?
Yeah.
So it's that type of stuff, right? And if they need something, believe me, they're going to tell you, right?
Yeah.
And we can just step back and say, okay, hey, by the way, you guys, interested in whatever, you having any issues, we got that. Oh yeah, and they're going to be much more inclined to be like, yeah, let's try that out. I never thought about that, but as long as you're here, and we like you, and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, let's try it out. You never know. And so it's those types of things. Like I said, it's the long term, but to me, it's the fun part. I mean, that's what I liked about the job. If you ask me, like, did you like selling? I'm like, well, not like, talking about product necessarily, or bells and whistles. I liked, chatting with people, and it could be about nothing. It could be about the equipment, you name it. There was one time I remember I was I was the rep for J&J down here in San Diego, and we had gone in to talk with them about their Luminex instrumentation. I was the rep, so I wasn't the field scientist anymore, but we brought in the field scientist, and we're doing basically a lunch and learn. So I remember we're in this conference room, and they're going over all this, and so the focus of the day is this. And so we're chatting, and they're done with the lunch and learn, and then I start talking with some other people, just shooting the breeze. And I'm a big Star Wars fan, and I don't know if you know this, although I haven't done it in a while, but I'm part of the 501st Legion, which is the costuming group for Star Wars, right? So cool. You have to have screen accurate costumes, you have to be approved, all that. So when you see like Star Wars days at Petco Park or weddings, that's usually this group. And so I just got chatting with them about that, and they were Star Wars fans. I said, oh, I'm in the group and they're doing this. I'm like, oh my God, did you guys do that? And so we just built this rapport. And I said, hey, by the way, I know you're talking about, the Luminex stuff, and you're using some cell culture media, if you will. That's what you're testing. And the answer is, so you guys do a lot of cell culture. Do you have to count your cells? They're like, yeah, we do it, manual. I'm like, hey, you know what? We actually have a manual cell counter, or excuse me, automated cell counter that you might be interested in. That can, tie in with this. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And so they ended up like, yeah, come bring it in. We'll demo it, and they ended up buying it. And so the end result of them buying that instrument was not really why I initially talked with them. It was just developed organically because we had a common interest and we just were shooting the breeze. And I said, oh, by the way, in the relation to what you're doing, hey, maybe there's something else that I can sell, to help you with, right? And that's the way it worked. And so I remember that. I remember that vividly, and I kind of use that as a baseline of like when I'm chatting with people. Sometimes I sit back. I'm like, okay, am I doing that type of thing? Or am I doing more of like, hey, these are the bells and whistles? And sometimes I change, because you kind of get caught up in that sometimes, just sit back and say, hey, okay, no worries. And, sometimes change the subject, or just kind of just, hold off, listen to them more, and, kind of go from there. So like I said, it's a roundabout way to do things. And, we're always in sales, like about the number. But I really try to coach my team is it's what you do, and it's how you do it, and the number will come. And it's the effort you're going to put in. And so one of the things I really like them to do is we keep a list of all the events that we do. Because I personally am all about the intangibles. It's how you make the person feel, and how you bring your, promote yourself, and therefore promote, your products. People buy from people that they like, right?
Yeah.
And they might buy stuff that they don't even need or don't even want if they like you, right? So, I mean, I'm not saying that they should or shouldn't, but like you said, I mean, it's like, somebody coming door to door. If you don't know them, whatever, you're not going to buy the Girl Scout cookies. But if you are really good friends with the family down there, and you're like, oh, I really like those guys, you'll buy the cookies. I'm like, I don't want them, I mean, they're good, but I just, don't eat the cookies. So, that takes time, and that takes effort. But if you do all those things and you do them right, like you said, good things will happen. And, I've been successful in sales, and it's because of that. It hasn't because I've always focused on the number. I mean, it's there, but it's always really been, and probably my boss would want to hear that, but it's kind of been secondary. I'm like, that'll come. I know I got to get there, but I'm not going to get there if I keep saying, you need to buy this, you need to buy this. No, I have to make sure that people are taken care of, and they want to buy it or they need it, right? Because at the end of the day, I still have to go home, and if somebody bought something and I'm like, oh God, I don't want to go back in that lab because they're finding out it's going to be a real piece of junk. And, you never want to do that,
That's
right?
the worst.
And you want to go back and like, hey, I'll go back any day. I support the product, to support what I told you. And if it's working for you, cool. And if it's not, we'll make it right.
Exactly. Standing by that is like critically important too. And I think the kind of what, and I believe, I'm in our stylist, like we're stylistically like that too, where it's one, it's a long game, but two, it's also kind of like, you kind of described it it's kind of like contextual and situational too. Some people are very, feature focused, and like, that's cool. That's cool. If you want to talk features, I'll talk features with you. That's awesome. But sometimes people don't want to, like exactly what you said. And that's cool. Cause I also, like, a lot for me, kind of the thing that I can, that I'm very passionate about outside of theaters is like food and wine. Like, that's just what my wife and I kind of like do in our spare time. And so always I'm just like, have you tried this restaurant? Have you tried that restaurant? Or do you have any recommendations for me? Because I'm always, and I was actually, as I was thinking about, I think you said it was Ron, or one of your co-founders at your winery, who lives in Oceanside. And every time I think about Oceanside, I always think about Tanner's, the smash burger place, which is so good. Like, my wife's family lives in Oceanside, so whenever we go down there, I'm like, can we go to Tanner's, please? Like, it is so freaking good. But I digress. But yeah, I think it's kind of this thing is like, one, say situational awareness, but also, right?
Yes, you know your part.
Know who you're talking to. Like, like sometimes they're like, no, I don't want to hear any of this. I just want to know exactly what this thing does. Like, that's
True.
totally cool. Like,
Yep.
that's I can do that too. Like, we can talk about that.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Biotech Startups podcast with Michael Paliotti. Be sure to tune in for part 4, where we will explore the differences between working with large pharma, academia, and emerging biotech companies, and how Michael tailors his approach to each. He also shares his perspective on leadership, how he transitioned from sales into management, what he's learned about coaching a team, and why empathy is key to being an effective leader. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your friends. See you next time. The Biotech Startups podcast is produced by Exceeder. Don't want to miss an episode? Search for the Biotech Startups podcast wherever you get your podcasts and click subscribe. Exceeder provides research labs with equipment leases on founder-friendly terms to support paths to exceptional outcomes. To learn more, visit our website www.exceeder.com. On behalf of the team here at Exceeder, thanks for listening. The Biotech Startups podcast provides general insights into the life science sector through the experiences of its guests. The use of information on this podcast or materials linked from the podcast is at the user's own risk. The views expressed by the participants are their own and are not the views of Exceeder or sponsors. No reference to any product, service, or company in the podcast is an endorsement by Exceeder or its guests.